Welcome back to the show, everybody, to Be the Trader. Today, I have a very special guest, someone that I look up to, someone that I have been watching from a long time since I kind of got in the game back in 2016, 17 time period. And Tim Bohen, if you don't know his backstory, you need to go research it. But I'm going to tell you right now that he started his own business at a young age, worked his way up in that business, had a successful business, but wanted to find something else that could help him kind of live his own way in his life because he actually created a job and then became a trader, became successful, actually woke up extra early to trade while he managed his own business. So you can do two things at once. And now he's teaching, mentor, and teaching a lot of people on his podcast, SteadyTrade, and on his platform, Stocks to Trade. So Tim, thanks for joining me today, man.
Thank you, man. We just to all your listeners, we did a podcast with Alex the other day. Depending on when this gets released and when ours gets released, definitely check it out. It was a fun one. We had everybody. Kim was there, Steven was there. Typical Steven trying to write. He was trying to create drama. I tell you, that guy should be on a reality show. He'd be good on a reality show. But thank you, man. I really enjoy this stuff. And as you mentioned, we don't necessarily need to get in the bio too much, but always had an interest in finance, literally going back to elementary school, and always had that entrepreneurial mindset. Again, I was mowing lawns. I was, and then I worked at a grocery store, and I was, I don't know if this is something to brag about or not, but I was worked at a grocery store. I delivered pizzas. Every job I had as a teenager, I was within like 6 months. I was the highest paid person at that job. Obviously I'm bragging about being the highest paid stock shelf stocker, but the point is, just, man, I've always had that Midwestern work ethic, and I knew, my dad was, he worked in a shop, Federal Mogul, worked 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and then also farmed 160 acres. He still farms today. He can barely get in the damn tractor, but he's retired. He's got more money he needs. He still farms, and God bless him for that work ethic is the biggest thing, I think. And man, if you've got the passion like you do, obviously your listeners know your backstory, but I didn't know it till the other day. And you're saving up money to quit a job, running through that, saving up more money, going back to work. And that was me. I kept trying this stuff, and thank God I had the business and I could kind of dabble in it. So, but yeah. You remind me of a young me, man, even though I'm, like 50 years older than you are.
Yeah. Your work ethic, it's just interesting. You learned that from your father. That's pretty much where I learned it from too. And just seeing them work their butts off, and he's still working to this day. It's just crazy. And it's a testament to what you'll probably be working till you die too. You'll probably just keep on working.
To me, man, retirement is like, I don't get it, man. I'm like, why? It's like, so I can sit in a lazy boy and watch Judge Judy all day. I'm like, what? Or I don't even get, like, I know, like, the dream would be like, oh, sit on the beach all day.
But you get bored.
Why the fuck do I want to sit on the beach all day? Now, I love the beach. Don't get me wrong. But all day, every day? No way, man. I want to work. I want to do shit,
Yeah, no, I get you. So I want to kind of get into more of what you're doing today in terms of, we know you're a mentor and teacher, but like, everyone, I feel like, and has challenges, no matter where you are at in your journey as a trader, no matter if you've been consistent for many years, and I know you've been doing this for over a decade. And so, what challenges do you currently face right now? Like, are you dealing with any kind of challenge?
Interesting enough, I mean, so with stocks to trade, I do a lot of mentoring with a lot of newer, and probably some intermediate traders and stuff. And I've actually done 1,900 webinars in 4 years. Two a day, every single day. I've never missed a day in 4 years. Never called in sick. Never missed a single day. So one of the biggest challenges I deal with is, I really don't trade as much as I used to, because when you're answering, 50 questions, and when you're doing live webinars, it's hard, man. I mean, it's hard enough to make a trade when the phone's ringing, or, or again, I know you're still working part-time. Somebody's hitting you on Slack or something like that. So, again, I don't trade as much as I used to. I still got a huge passion for it, but teaching is so rewarding too. So when it comes to challenges in my trading, time is one. And the second is, and we all deal with this, when I get the time, sometimes I will rush into trades that I might not have made, simply because I'm like, oh, okay, I got nothing going on today. What do we got?
Right.
And hey, some of the listeners might be like, well, I'm dealing with that as a newbie. It's a newbie thing, but man, it always sticks to you. When you got it in your blood like we do, it's like, you get, again, like, say I didn't have to do a webinar today, man. I got the itch, man. I want to make some trades,
It's funny you say that, because when I ask that question, everyone has different answers, but what's unique is you deal with it when you're new, and you deal with it when, it doesn't matter when, because it shows you that it's something you're going to deal with for your entire trading career. And that's what you just showed right there. I mean, like, dealing with your time and trying to trade, like, if you're trying to do that and juggle two things, that's difficult. And then when you do have the time, you have that extra itch. And it's something that, people as traders, myself, like when I first started trading, I was always thinking, man, if I could only get rid of this, and I could be profitable, right? But you don't get rid of anything, because it's all part of you, and you just grow with it.
Well said. And the way I put it a lot, whether it be on the podcast or in the mentorship program, is, the best way I can put it is the saying about alcoholism, like they say, once you're an alcoholic, and I don't know the science, so don't, if you fact check me, but I've read these quotes and like Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff. They say, once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic, but you can manage it through, whether it be 12-step or whatever you use. And trading is like that, man. You never slay any of these demons. They're never dead. But over time, the biggest thing is you recognize, you're like, whoa, what are you doing here? And you recognize it quicker, and then you just manage it better. So whether that be, all the things, the FOMO, you were like, hey, I'm gonna buy this morning runner at 3, and now it's at 350, and you want to buy it at 350, and now it's at 4, and now you want to buy it at 450. You deal with that, but then you say, wait a minute, dude, you just fucking missed it. All right, you missed it. Don't buy it at 450, even if it goes to 6. Your plan was 3. Whether you missed your order or you missed a fill, you missed it. You've been here before. Don't do it. And that's the best analogy I can give, is that alcoholic analogy.
That's a great analogy, man.
You just recognize, like, you get in an argument with your girlfriend or your wife, and you're like, man, I really want to drink, and you're like, no, hey, do something constructive. Go to the gym, read a book, call a friend and say, hey, dude, and trading is like that, in my opinion. So
that's a great observation, because, actually today myself, I actually went into just stepped out of my lane, right? I stepped out of my lane, took a small hit, and just stepped away and closed the computer, because I knew that the only reason I took that trade is because I missed an opportunity that I just missed an opportunity that was amazing due to a broker issue. And anyway, so it's just cool that you said that, because it's true. I mean, you got to constantly remind yourself and be aware. And luckily I was aware as soon as I made that and just said, you know what? I'm done. I turn off the computer and just got to work, because if you don't, that's how you keep on going, in that circle. Now, and I feel like, and you correct me if I'm wrong, man, I feel like, because you deal with traders all the time, right? You're answering questions 24/7. So I personally feel like it's more of being able to forgive yourself, being able to just say, you know what, I made a mistake, forgive myself, and move forward. But instead we get trapped in, like, I made this mistake, I'm an idiot, I need to correct it right now, I need to correct that mistake now, and then you just get worse. I mean, what do you think?
Oh yeah. I mean, again, that negative self-talk will kill you, man. And actually, as a referral for anybody listening, check out Kim Ann Curtin. She's got her own website, her own book, and everything, and she talks a lot about this stuff. And yeah, I mean, some of the worst losses I took were because you get that ego, you double down, you get pissed off, you're gonna get even with this stock, which is the dumbest thing ever. It's like, oh, I'm gonna get even with it, and you're right. I mean, if you can the sooner you can be like, listen, I screwed up, Tim, you screwed up, Alex, you screwed up, whatever, tomorrow's another. That's the greatest thing about the market is, and again, I think a lot of newer traders struggle with this. It's like there's this urgency, and there's like, I gotta this trade, I gotta today. And I mean, it's like, listen, I started 15 years ago, and I'm still here. I mean, tomorrow's another day, next week, next month, next year. You don't, and you don't have to put that urgency on yourself. And if you do that grudge trading or that trying to get even trading, it just makes things worse. And I've been there.
Yeah, absolutely does. I think it's all ties around the fact that most of us get into this game to get out of something else. I think that's really what it comes from. But what's one of the biggest things that you get asked that people think is like the answer for them? Like, if they can get this down, things will be good to go. Like, what is one of those questions that you feel like, obviously is not the situation, but you get asked that often, that you're just like, come on, guys, this is not the real focus. This is not what you need to focus on. You need to focus on this instead.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, the biggest, I mean, specifically, the first thing that comes to mind is like SEC filings.
Yes.
And listen, I do fundamental stuff and I look at fundamental stuff, but it's like so many people think that there's like this. It's like there's like this gold to be found in there. Okay, listen, you should understand, when there's an offering up, you should understand when there's outstanding warrants. You should know if a company has a history of dilution and stuff. But that's the first one that jumped to the front of my brain, that people are like, they just put way too much into it. I mean, and there's YouTube videos, I've done videos, there's stuff out there that will tell you 95% of what you need to know in like a 15-minute video. And so that's the biggest one that comes to mind.
That's a good point though, because I got lost in that for a time myself.
Me too. Dude, I probably threw them away. I had penny stock filings marked up with highlighters, underlined. I had the stupid little fucking Post-it note tagging all this. And it's like, never made me any money,
Yeah.
I'd print it out. I'd print out some 100-page filing, mark it up like I was back then I thought, I mean, this is 2007. I'm like, oh, I'm like some hardcore researcher, whatever. And I'm like, at the end of the day, none of that ever made me any money. I mean, it's like, you can tell, the best part is you can go through a penny stock filing and find 500 red flags, but every penny stock has 500 red flags. You're not, it's like I'm looking out my window right now. It's like trying to find some snow. There's fucking snow everywhere,
It's funny you say that, because like for a time, like we're not saying SEC filings are just trash. Like, what we're trying to say is, like, for me, from point blank example for myself is I always do, like, look at the float, look at SEC filing for warrants, dilution, the history of that, and then potentially do my trade. But what I have found for myself is, during that process, I found that at the middle part, SEC filing, I would get such a strong bias sometimes that I would ignore price action. I wrote an actual blog about that, where I had a loss because I was just literally all I saw was, it's fit my pattern. here's the SEC filing that fits. It's a short. Like I didn't even ignored price action completely. And so when I took that loss and wrote about it, I literally now like this might be good or bad, but
sure,
I
if you
personally
don't
love
mind,
it.
make sure you
Yeah,
you link or send it to me. I'd like to
yeah,
see it. I haven't
sure.
seen it. So
Sure. I don't know if this is good or bad, but this is what I'm doing now. This is something that I want to do. Is now I'm just like looking at see if it hits my whatever my parameters are for a setup play, and then reprice action, and then I'll look at SEC filings, but I don't put emphasis on that anymore because at the end of the day, price action for how short term I trade. I mean, I'm in and out in the 30 minutes, an hour max. It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't
yep,
matter because not in that short hour, what matters is that price action. That's
yep,
all that matters. And if I'm holding it the whole day, then okay, I get it. That might matter a little more. If I'm holding it overnight, then that definitely matters.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And I
yeah,
think that's one of the delineations, like, and listen, I mean, we get intraday offerings. It does happen, but it doesn't happen very often.
yeah,
And that is a great point. I mean, listen, if you're swing trading these, you need to look at those filings. But like, I know your goal is morning trades in and out before, noon or maybe earlier.
yeah.
I
Before
mean,
10:30.
yeah, man, and thing is, and again, I'm sure somebody will fact check me, but I mean, in 15 years, I don't know if an intraday offering before noon. I don't know if I've ever.
Yeah, I don't feel like I've ever seen that.
You'll get one every once now, about 3 times a year. You get one in the afternoon, but in the
Yep.
morning, man, I don't ever remember that. So
It was so crazy. It was just like what 3 weeks ago, we had like 4 or 5 offerings all midday. I was like, "Whoa, things are changing."
which
I
was
haven't seen that in a
scary.
while. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. It was. It was. That's So I'm curious on when you were beginning trading, right? What was if you could go back in time now and give yourself one piece of advice that something that would have really helped you personally, like maybe it was a certain challenge you were dealing with and you just couldn't get over it until like later in your career, what would you tell yourself and what challenge would that be, would that advice be towards?
The biggest thing I dealt with early, and like we joked about the alcoholism, I'm not saying I've slayed this demon, but my niche, especially early, and this is gonna speak dear to your heart. First 6-7 years of my career, my niche was shorting penny stocks. That was 90% of what I short in the afternoon, shorting the afternoon favors.
Okay, gotcha.
Now, again, this dates me, but going back 2007 to like 2013, man, I always hate to say everything, but man, so much stuff would pop early and fade later. I mean, we didn't get, and if you're listening on iTunes, I'm doing the hand gestures, but these days, we get that early spike, and then if it kind of hangs around, you get that secondary spike. Man, you just didn't get that back then. You'd have these afternoon faders and they'd gap down the next day. They were beautiful setups. But the biggest thing I dealt with was it wasn't enough. It wasn't, well, I want to trade more than 3 afternoon faders, even though I was like 75% win rate on these. So then, I took my biggest loss in FAS or FAZ. I can't remember which one it was. That's the 3X financial ETFs. They were crazy back in those days. They were like the VIX ETFs today.
Okay, gotcha.
And 3X leveraged, huge moves. So, and I'd do that. I would be like, oh, well, there's no junk penny stock up big today. I'm gonna get outside my wheelhouse. Big loss. I'm gonna trade some 3X ETF. Because it's got range. It's moving. Or even back then I didn't. Over the years I've developed much more of a swing trade, quote unquote, real stock strategy. Like space today was one. SPCE, Virgin Galactic. But anyway, back then, man, I didn't. I was just a penny stock guy, but I'd get bored. I'd trade real stocks, $300 stocks, $400 stocks. And as a new trader, man, you should be doing the minimal stuff possible. If you find, Like I said, I was shorting penny stocks with a 75% win rate. Why the fuck was I trying to do anything else, you know?
Yeah.
And but we all deal with that. I mean, you said you dealt with it today,
Yep.
you know? So I think that's the biggest thing, especially if you're new. If you now you got to dabble, you got to experiment, but if you find something that like, man, this works a lot, just do that, man. Just do that, you know.
Absolutely. And so it's funny what you said earlier, how when you started, it was all short selling, right? It was all short in the fader. And when you said that, I was just thinking like, man, the market's changed because it's it's definitely not.
Well,
And
I
then you
you know,
said,
listen, I blame, you know, listen, you know, most of your listeners, I'm sure, are probably aware of Tim Sykes. Tim Sykes is a close friend of mine. You know, we're very good friends. I talk to him several times a week. But Sykes ruined it for everybody, man. You know, back then nobody knew anything about shorting these penny stocks. Hell, back then people didn't even think you could, you know, and he made it so mainstream, and that's why we see. I mean, man,
that makes sense.
you didn't have 3 million float stocks that traded 75 million shares a day like we see today. You
It's
know,
crazy.
what did GNPX trade?
Yes,
50
that was the
million?
one. Thanks for bringing it up.
But I mean, you know, back before Sykes brought this niche to everyone, you know, something like GNPX, and again, I'm doing from memory, don't quote me on these, but you know, back in like 2010, GNPX would have traded 5 million shares. It wouldn't have traded 50 million like it did today, or it might have been more than that today, you know.
I don't even know. I like I said, I turned off my computer at like 10 or at 9 my time. So yeah, 10 Eastern. And I haven't even looked at it, but I know that
83 million. 80
really? Did it really? Oh
Yeah,
my God.
83 million shares today on a stock that was $1.50 2 days ago. You know, you did not see that back quote unquote in the day, you know.
Yeah. And it's cool to see that because what was interesting when you said that at the beginning, the reason I brought that up is because the market is always changing and it shows that you've been adapting with the market. As you mentioned before, now you're mainly a long bias.
Well, I'm
Really.
99% long bias, man, because you know the problem is and again, there's a style for everyone, but I just, you know, it's just when you see, and again, I'm not trying to put salt in your wound, but you know, something like GNPX that, you know, it spikes early, pulls back, and then breaks into that 945 window on ridiculous volume, and I don't have to worry about a borrow. You know, I don't have
Yeah.
to, you know, and it's like, and I didn't trade GNPX today. I traded space today, but you know, I just would rather, and I can trade it with any broker, you know, on the long side. You know, I can trade GNPX on the long side with E-Trade, IB. I don't need some, you know, quote unquote sketchy offshore broker or
Yep.
pay ridiculous fees, you know, and it's just, you know, and like I said, man, the thing I recognized is, and there's no way for me to like mathematically or scientifically prove this, but man, I tell you, in 2010, stuff like GNPX did not trade freaking 83 million shares a day. You know, there's just so many more. Now that's a good thing. I think there's way more traders now, but again, if you're trying to short these things on a Friday morning and it's got that volume, man, you know.
You better have risk management.
Exactly.
That's all. You know, what's your opinion? Now, you know how you see it floating around. I'm guilty of it. I'll tweet something like, you know, risk management, you know, price action is king. You know, there's always like these little sayings. What do you feel like if there was one element, right, that you really need to work on to help you with consistency? No, not get you consistency, because there's not one thing. There's a lot of things. But like if there was one thing that a lot of traders lack, let's say they found their pattern, because a lot of people can find what they're good at,
Yep.
right? And then you find that, but then there's that one thing, because you're dealing with traders all the time. What is that like consistent thing that you see is just like keeping people from being just constantly having that nice curve?
Oh, I mean, you know, and this is, if your listeners listen to the podcast, they probably know where I'm going to go, but, you know, it just blows me away how many people just don't they literally don't have a plan, you know, and, you know, a plan is I got my little index card kit here I still use today. A plan is just
I can't believe you.
yeah, I got stacks of these fucking things, but it's just a plan is just where am I entering? Why am I entering? I mean, listen, is it because of the press release or is it just the price and volume? Okay, am I buying GNPX because I recognize this thing's trading 15 million shares at 9 a.m. But why are you buying it? What's your why? And then where are you going to stop out of this thing? And even because the thing is, like you said, even if they find a setup that works, I always one of my favorite sayings, one of my favorite newbie trader saying is, I'll stop out if it doesn't work. And I'm always like, what the fuck does that mean? Does that mean if it pulls back a penny? Well, it's not working. You're green or you're red on this trade. You bought it $1, it's at 99 cents. Or does that mean 80? Or does that mean VWAP? Or does that mean a moving average? Or does that mean a support or resistance level? So that's got to be in your plan. Okay. What's your why of getting in? What's your why of getting out? And where is that? And I think that is just a huge thing. People just, listen, it sounds like this is some, I'm not asking you to write a 10-page book on this trade. It all fits on an index card or a Post-it. I mean,
Yep.
if it's a day trade and it takes more than a Post-it, it's probably, it's either a no trade or it's a swing trade or whatever. If you're sitting there writing down what the PE ratio is and all, I mean, that's not a day.
Then you're swing trading.
Yeah, which is fine. So, but I think that's the biggest thing is people just, they don't have a plan and they don't. And then part two is they don't stick to it. If you buy this, or like, let's talk short side, if you short this 100% runner, if it spiked to 2, pulled to 8 and you're risking 2, you're risking that high day reclaim and all of a sudden you're still in at 220. Well, what good's your plan?
Yep.
You were supposed to, you said high day reclaim. You shorted at 180. It pulled big candle, looked like a reversal. You're going to stop out at high day. Well, what the fuck are you still doing in at 220?
Yep.
So
you mentioned a couple of things about like indicators and all of that. I have my own opinion on those. Like I like simple. I just like my chart. That's all I like to see. I use technical analysis, and that's all I pretty much do. And VWAP, I have it on my chart, but I can't say. I mean, I do use it for like one of my setups, but like 3 of mine, I don't even look at it. But I'm just curious, like, I mean, before VWAP, I mean, I guess you do use VWAP. So, but what's your thought on just people using, like, how you'll see people with like charts and then there's all these indicators. Like, do you feel like, just from your experience and what you've seen, do you feel like it's valid for some? It just depends on who you are, or is like, what do you feel like people are searching for when they're looking at all these indicators?
Again, number one, I did it too. I used to have shit all over my charts. I mean, I kept adding stuff. The biggest problem is if you add enough indicators, you can make any stock look bullish or bearish. It's like,
Yep.
you just keep adding indicators. You're like, oh, there it is. There's always that. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that meme where it's like,
oh, there's like everything.
Yeah. And then he's like, there, I found the bottom, and there's like 75,000 lines on the chart. But, I think, again, I'm a short-term trader. I'm predominantly a day trader. I mean, I think most of it just adds noise. Again, I use VWAP mainly because, it's, and I use it simply, I'm just like, listen, if I'm long biased and the stock is above VWAP, I'm like, okay, that's what I want to see. I mean, one of my favorite setups back in the day was that late day VWAP fail for a short, so again, I'm doing hand gestures if you're on iTunes, but it's that big spiker, then it kind of tracks sideways and then it fails VWAP. And then you short into that and then you cover, you stop on a VWAP reclaim in essence. Yeah. Otherwise, as long as it stays under VWAP, back then, I'd hold them overnight because, as long as it's under VWAP, that tells me the sellers are in control. that gives me a guide, to where now if it spikes above VWAP on volume, I know, whoa, you're wrong. But I mean, and I'm not putting down, if it works for you is what I always tell everybody. I mean, we used to trade the 1060 cross all the time, the 10 EMA and the 60, or the 10 MA and the 60 MA. But it was always that went out of style, and then Fibonacci's kind of got hot. And, but I don't know. I almost think it's one of those things you got to I think you need to play with it.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is track it and see if it's actually making any difference. If you're trading some 1060 cross, is it actually working or whatever? But for me, price and volume and VWAP, which again, to maybe some newer traders out there, I mean, VWAP is just an amalgamation of price and volume. I mean, it's basically just combining the two indicators that matter,
So I'm gonna be selfish on this last question before we end the show. Okay, so I'm just curious so one thing that I found personally for myself that I have been recently that I've noticed, especially this month, is for some reason, when I have found what works for me, right? I still sometimes deal with that challenge of stepping out of my lane.
Yep.
Right. What would you say? What any advice you would give me, and there would probably be a lot of people out there who are dealing with this, to end the show with, "Hey, Alex, maybe tell me something that I should just do, because I don't know what it is, but for some reason lately, December, great, January, great, didn't even step out of my lane, and in February it's just first week didn't step out of my lane, but this week I've been stepping out of my lane very consistently and just getting slapped." So. Any advice there?
Biggest thing is I'm a huge fan of journaling. Number one, I've got Evernotes that I've journaled what I was thinking at the end of the day. I've reviewed that, but I think that's valuable, and I think it's a great way to cement it in your brain. But listen, I made that same mistake for 5 years, and I always wish I had a better answer. But there's so much of this stuff that you just get sick of it, and you're like, I'm not gonna do that anymore. And maybe that takes you 6 months, or maybe you're bullheaded like me and it takes you 5 years, but there, and you've seen it, again with Steven, if you're not familiar with my podcast, it's SteadyTrade.com. Steven's my co-host. I mean, listen, Steven, impulsive as hell, and he'll be the first to admit it. I mean, this guy likes to party, he's free. He's free.
He's free spirit.
He's free spirit. But over the last few years, he's just in his trading, he's like, I'm not going to do that anymore. And it took him a couple years. And to the listener, hey, hopefully it takes you a few months. It probably won't. Yeah. But so much of this just takes time. And it's funny you ask that question, because this morning I retweeted a guy. And he's like, I'm paraphrasing here, but he's like, hey, I want to become a doctor. Go to school for 5 years.
I saw that.
Practice for 5 years. Hey, I want to be a lawyer. I'm going to go to school for 5 years. Practice for 5 years. I want to be an elite athlete. Practice for 6 years. And then at the end, it's like, I want to be a day trader. Start tomorrow. And
yeah, that's so true.
And that's the biggest thing I know you're geared towards new traders, and we are too at SteadyTrade, is just, man, have realistic expectations. You were trying to do one of the most difficult things. Why is it most difficult? It's just you against you, man. I mean, there's no boss. I mean, there's no boss saying, I guess if you're in a prop firm or something, you got a risk manager, but if you're trading your own money, there's nobody saying, Alex, get out of that trade, man. You hit your max risk, get out,
Right.
Or there's no boss saying, Alex, I can tell you're just boredom trading, you're trading outside your set. So one of the reasons it makes it so hard, I mean, as a lawyer, you got to follow the lawyer rules, or,
right.
Your client fires you, or nobody hires you anymore. I mean, if you're Michael Avenatti, you get in trouble, and, you try to extort Nike and you go to jail, you got to follow the lawyer rules. But when you're trading your own money, you can do anything you want. And that's why I think it's so hard. And that's why I doubly want everyone to have realistic expectations, man. I know you're doing this with the podcast, man. I'm not selling any Lambo dreams here, okay? This shit is really, really, really fucking hard. And it might be the hardest thing you ever do. But damn it, it's rewarding. It's rewarding, man. And as I joke about the Lambo license, I mean, you can do it from anywhere. I mean, there is no boss. That's the great thing about it. But it ain't easy, man. It ain't easy. So have realistic expectations is the biggest thing I tell people. And man, it's probably going to be years. Sorry. I mean, I know. I'm sure if you Google day trading, there's guys telling you they'll teach you all in 10 days, but it's probably going to be years, man. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, look, man, I want to definitely give you, I know you've been mentioning, and I mentioned too, the show that you're part of, but just take a quick minute right before we end the show. Let everyone know where they can contact you or find you at real quick.
Perfect. Yeah. So SteadyTrade.com is the podcast, free, that's and we have a lot of fun. Again, Steven is, I joke about him, but he's a great guy. I mean, man, he likes
I had a lot of fun meeting him. He was great.
Yeah, he's a man, he's the guy, I mean, listen, if you want to, if you're in town on Friday night, Steven's the guy you want to look up, man. He's and but yeah, and so check out SteadyTrade.com. We got like 150 episodes. We do a lot of stuff. We almost did like when we started, we did like a 12 episode like how to day trade. So I mean, if you're like totally new, we put out a ton of free stuff. We interview a bunch of authors. We got a lot of books that we recommend. We really enjoy it. It's good stuff. And then I also, I do, I work with Stocks to Trade, which I think is a great trading platform. And I also do a ton of stuff on the YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and go to Stocks to Trade, I do 3 videos a week. We do live recaps. We do interviews. I do a lot of like 5-minute how-tos. So that would be the 2 places. Definitely check it out. I mean, the YouTube is great. It's Stocks to Trade YouTube and then Steady Trade podcast. So
perfect. Well, look, Tim, I appreciate you coming on the show, and it was a pleasure, my man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex.